Welcome back to some of Seashore Birding Adventures, and in this trip report episode we will be travelling through the old and wonderful and historical country of España. I took this trip back in June of 2016, clocking up over 2,000 kilometres whilst navigating my way from the Spanish Pyrenees in the north all the way through central Spain to the Straits of Gibraltar in the south. As expected on a journey of this scale and within a country with such diverse and unique and dramatic landscapes, I got to encounter a whole variety of interesting habitat types. And of course, connected to those habitats and landscapes comes a distinctive group of birds. Admittedly, the birding was a little tough at times, mainly due to the time of year. I really should have been here about 4 weeks earlier, but also to the due to the previous winter's impact in certain areas. There was a massive amount of rain had fallen, and as a consequence the steppe grasses were very high, making spotting bustards and sand grouse quite challenging. However, those challenges didn't deter me, and I managed to tally up a species list of 146 species, 22 of which were lifers for me. Weather, as you can imagine, at that time of year was rather warm, with daily average temperatures of around 27 degrees, the highest being 36 in Trujillo in Extremadura. There was light precipitation on day one in the mountains around Jaca, and some strong winds off the south coast on the last 2 days. Regrettably, I didn't take any video back then. I was just birding. I was really just interested in seeing these incredible species rather than thinking about how I might share these experiences in the future on a YouTube platform. However, I hopefully have caught a few photos that will give you a sense of the experience, and I'll present these in a slideshow format, including maps, so that you can orientate yourselves with the various locations and areas I was birding in. As always, these videos fulfill two purposes for me. Firstly, they are a great way to journal and archive my trip reports and adventures, and secondly, by sharing them, I hope they are both entertaining and useful as a resource for anyone planning their own trips. Okay, I myself did quite a lot of homework preparing for this trip by reading blogs and trip reports, but mainly referred to a few books in planning my itinerary. Where to Watch Birds in Southern and Western Spain by Ernest Garcia and Andrew Patterson. A Year's Birding in Extremadura by Ian Parsons. Finding Birds in Spain series by Dave Gosney, covering North Spain, Extremadura and Andalusia. These little books are absolutely superb and jam-packed with incredible information and maps. Of course, the Collins Bird Guide by Lars Svensson, and the 2-part concise volumes of the Birds of the Western Palearctic. The flight from Gatwick went smoothly, and I arrived Bilbao mid-morning, picked up the rental car and headed for some cultural sustenance at the Guggenheim Museum. By 2:30 I was on the road heading east on a 3-hour drive to the town of Jaca, located close to the Spanish Pyrenees, where I spent the next 3 nights. Notable birds during the drive included osprey, griffon vulture, black kite and booted eagle. From there, southwest to Trujillo for 3 nights, then continued down south to Seville for 2 nights. The last leg of the journey took me to Tarifa at the southern tip of Spain for the remainder of the trip, before heading east to Malaga and a flight back to London. After a good night's sleep and enjoyable coffee outside the hotel, listening to the delightful song of a nearby nightingale, I began a leisurely drive north towards the ski resort of Aston. En route, redback shrike, dipper, Iberian green woodpecker and European seron were all noted, and it was just nice to take my time stopping and scanning in some different areas. A thick layer of mist lay over the hills initially, making scanning at distance challenging, so I concentrated on what I could see at closer quarters, which produced some very good birds. A wonderful male rock thrush was present, which was definitely on my wish list, and Citral finch was another nice surprise, a bird that I had fortunately seen in Norfolk the previous year and a mega rare bird for the UK. A large raptor at distance flew over, which caught my eye and landed on the ground, allowing me to get good scope views and provided the conclusive ID of golden eagle. Other notable birds seen during that morning included yellowhammer, rock bunting, water pipit, crag martin and black redstart. The remainder of the day was spent at various sites within the Hicho Valley. The scenery was incredible, offering a commanding canvas for such species as Egyptian vulture, griffon vulture, booted eagle, short-toed snake eagle, black kite, red kite and red-billed chough. Wall creeper seemed absent at Boca del Inferno during my visit, which is sometimes the case as they don't always breed there, and lammergeier, though searched for, didn't make an appearance during my vigil. I did however add crested tit to the species list. The following morning I headed southwest to Malos de Riglos, just an hour's drive southwest of Jaca. Species seen during the drive included white stork, woodchuck shrike, corn bunting, spotless starling and a big colony of nesting house martin and crag martin. To be fair, my photos really don't do justice on just how incredible these giant conglomerate rock formations sit within this landscape. Rising up 300 metres above sea level, they form part of the foothills of the Pyrenees and truly are a sight to see. While scanning the red pinnacles of Malos de Riglos, griffon vulture, Egyptian vulture, raven and red-billed chough all effortlessly coasted the thermals around these impressive cliffs, and an unconfirmed sighting of lammergeier that frustratingly disappeared before a conclusive identification was made. This site is also well known as a good location for black wheatear, though I wasn't able to find any during my visit. More bee-eaters were on show here, and I added crested lark and cuckoo to the list. Nightingale, golden oriole and wheatear all made their presence known outside the hotel before my 7:30 departure. Today a 7-hour car drive lay ahead as I made my way southwest past Madrid and onto the ancient town of Trujillo. Kites, raptors and vultures kept me company on this long drive, which was a great distraction from the monotony of the rolling road. As I entered this historical location, lesser kestrel and swifts, both pallid and common, greeted me as I made my way through the tiny alleyways and into the town square. After booking into the accommodation and a couple of San Miguels, I took a slow walk through the town, where the continual screaming of swifts with their seemingly kamikaze personalities was in itself one of the most enjoyable avian encounters I've witnessed. Their aerobatic ability and continual high-speed manoeuvres was really something to see, with groups of up to 10 birds packed tightly and surely just racing each other just for the fun of it. Nesting white storks on buildings are always a wonderful sight to see, and something I will never get tired of. House martin, crag martin, swallow and red rump swallow were also present, with spotless starling and black redstart in some areas. To be honest, this town was one of my favourite places to visit, and it just oozes history and tradition. There are some fine medieval buildings here and impressive architecture from the 15th and 16th century. Of course, that was a time when the conquistadors built their great mansions and palaces in Trujillo, influenced from their travels in the Americas. Their most famous patron, Fernando Pizarro, was one of a few conquistadors born in Trujillo and is celebrated in the form of a giant bronze statue seen in the town square. Early evening I spent some time in the cultivated area behind the town, which gives you a good perspective of why this location was chosen as a fortified settlement. Having the high ground was a great advantage, of course, as not only would the terrain add resistance to any advancing army, it also gave you 360 degrees field of view. This area produced some really nice birds on my first visit, including Sardinian warbler, melodious warbler, stonechat, woodchat shrike, European bee-eater, little owl and Iberian magpie, formerly known as azure-winged magpie. A morning walk before breakfast back in the cultivated area was very productive, with 30 species recorded, including hoopoe and Iberian grey shrike. Next I headed to Monfragüe National Park, just a 35-minute drive north of Trujillo. Arriving around 10:30 I was greeted with some fantastic views of a pair of Bonelli's eagles circling overhead. The first planned stop was at the famous rock pinnacle known as Penafalcon, and breeding birds here include Eurasian griffon vulture, peregrine falcon, Egyptian vulture and black stork. Within minutes of scanning this area from the viewpoint, I managed to locate all of the aforementioned species, plus blue rock thrush, booted eagle, black red star and rock bunting. And after soaking up some of the atmosphere and enjoying seeing some of these wonderful birds, I took a path up to Castilla de Monfragüe. You have a choice here of a short route of about 200 metres, or opt for the longer path which takes you through some interesting cork and eucalyptus woodland. This takes about an hour but produced the Iberian race of long-tailed tit, nuthatch and short-toed tree creeper. Views from the top here were spectacular, and it was just nice to escape the heat from the lower elevation. Continuing east, I stopped at a dam where both griffon vulture and black vulture were seen at close range, and 2 more stops were geared towards looking for Spanish imperial eagle, though unfortunately I didn't get any. My destination, however, was Aracampo, south of Saucedilla and just a 35-minute drive east of Monfragüe National Park. Though the thought of visiting a nuclear power plant may not sound that appealing, as birders we know that these places are often great sites for birds. Here at Aracampo, the surrounding reed beds and warm shallow water provide a haven for a host of different species. I spent an hour and a half checking some of the main areas, which produced 22 species, including a few good trip birds. Purple heron, grey heron, little bittern, purple swamp hen, gold-billed tern, marsh harrier, hobby and zitting cisticola. As previously stated, the time of year and grass height were definitely not in my favour, but I persevered and put in a full day where I covered as much ground as possible. The first part of the day I covered was the Trujillo Plains, where I stopped at 7 key areas which delivered such delights as woodchat shrike, Iberian grey shrike, calandra lark, greater short-toed lark, black-bellied sandgrouse, Spanish sparrow, booted eagle and European roller. After lunch I concentrated on the Caceres Plains, making another 5 stops en route. Here I connected with more of the same species as Trujillo, but also managed to add a few more, such as Thekla lark, crested lark, little owl, hoopoe, little ring plover, alpine swift, great reed warbler, golden oriole, Iberian magpie and raven. As you've probably noticed, there has been no mention of great bustard, as unfortunately all my efforts went without success. Little bustard, to be honest, wasn't really on my radar, as not only was I searching at the wrong time of year and possibly the wrong areas, but also sadly this species has seriously declined in recent years. However, I did genuinely enjoy the day, and as you've heard, I got some really nice birds, but bird of the day for me was this glorious European roller. So today I said goodbye to Extremadura and began the journey south towards Seville. However, I actually went southwest as I wanted to go through the Sierra de San Pedro range. This was a good move for a couple of reasons. Just outside of Cáceres on the highway, I noticed what looked like a giant pale goose flying from the left, and of course it wasn't a goose. It was my life a great bustard. I had actually given up on this bird after many hours searching the day before, so this was a very unexpected and greatly received surprise. So continuing on through this dramatic area, I made a few stops affording great views of griffon vulture, black vulture, and also recorded turtle dove and Dartford warbler. Continual scanning and scrutinising of all suspicious raptors paid off with a single sighting of an adult Spanish imperial eagle near Albuquerque. Accommodation in Andalusia was located at Benicasson, which is a half-hour drive west of Seville, and once settled in, I headed for El Rocío, which sits on the northern perimeter of the Cotadallana National Park. When viewing El Rocío, you'd be forgiven for thinking you were in a scene from the Wild West, with its sandy streets lined with picturesque houses with wide verandas and wooden rails for tying up horses. It is most famous for a pilgrimage that takes part every year and has done for many centuries, with prayer, song, dance and food paying homage to the Virgin of El Rocío, with over 1 million people attending. This building, the Hermitage you can see in this photo, is the Church of Our Lady of El Rocío, and is where the small, much venerated carved wooden statue is located. Adjacent to El Rocío is the Madre de las Marismas, meaning Mother of the Marshes, and scanning across this lush green area, connected with the first of many greater flamingos that I'd be seeing over the next 2 days. This fabulous marsh held a few other new species for the trip, such as glossy ibis, spoonbill, little egret, grey lag goose and yellow wagtail. And just across the road at La Rosina Lagoon, I spent a little time walking the trails near the hides, which produced spotted flycatcher, purple heron, purple swamp hen, Iberian grey shrike, Dartford warbler, savage warbler, European bee-eater and red-legged partridge. The following morning I headed west from Benicasson on another avian quest to the Odile Marshes, a 45-minute drive southwest of Huelva. The Odile Marshes is known as a special bird protection area and a wetland of international importance under the Ramsar Agreement. It was declared a biosphere reserve by UNESCO in 1983, and there have been over 200 species recorded here. I spent an enjoyable morning walking the trails and recorded 31 species, poking around the pools, lagoons, tidal estuary and salt pans. There is an information centre here where I obtained a map for the main areas to check. Though red knob coot has been recorded here in the past, only common coot was recorded during my visit. Flamingos were in abundance, as were spoonbill, which breed close by. Black-tailed godwit, curlew and black-winged stilt made up the wader contingent, and I got my first Montague's harrier, a smart-looking adult male, and a second sighting of osprey. A group of 4 Ordwin's gull were recorded, and wildfowl were represented by gadwall, red-crested pochard and mallard. Zitting cisticola, reed warbler, spotless starling, red rump swallow and grey wagtail were also birds of note, The bird of the day for me was this smart looking penduline tit behind the visit centre, and after a little patience I also managed to locate its nest. The evening was spent in Seville with a memorable visit to Casa de la Memoria for some traditional flamenco. This alone, in terms of cultural experiences with live music, ranks as one of the top performances I've witnessed. The atmosphere was and passion and delivery was outstanding, as was the food and service. The city itself is wonderful, and even at that time of day you're not far from birding opportunities, with swift lesser kestrel and monk parakeets putting in appearances. The following morning, just south of Seville, I made the first of 3 planned stops en route to Tarifa at Los Palacios Lagoon, the other 2 being the Algaida wetlands and Laguna de Medina. Los Palacios wetland produced some really good birds and was well worth a visit. Whiskered tern, black-crowned night heron, purple heron, squacco heron, common waxbill, turtle dove and western olivaceous warbler were all standout birds. At the southern end of the Cotadonana National Park are the Algaida wetlands, and here I checked several areas, some being more productive than others. The best area by far was the Bonanza Salinas. These salt pans held some interesting species, including great flamingo, spoonbill, little egret, black-winged stilt, little tern and hundreds of avocet. Slenderbill gulls were also present, as was a pair of Kentish plover. So the final stop was at the most well-known of the Jerez lagoons, Laguna de Medina, which is located about midway between Seville and Tarifa. Though birding this area during the hottest part of the day and only for an hour didn't really divulge its full potential, I didn't leave empty-handed and added great-crested grebe and black-necked grebe to the species list. The route from here was basically southeast, and all went well initially until Google Maps decided to take me down a very precarious and long and bumpy road. Basically it was the wrong road, which luckily terminated at the right place. A little character building to say the least, but fortunately not without reward, as it was here where I got some cracking views of a pale-throated black-eared wheatear. The accommodation was a small house located just off a dirt track in a very rural area with great views of the sea. Stonechat, crested lark, goldfinch, little owl, spotless starling, woodchat shrike, Sardinian warbler and tawny pipit were all noted within an hour of arrival. Visiting Gibraltar was always on the itinerary, though the visible mass migration had finished. The morning was spent at Euro Point and Windmill Hill Flat scanning for the resident Barbary partridge, but with no luck. The presence of a massive yellow-legged gull breeding colony was very apparent, but the only real bird of interest to report was blue rock thrush. A trip on the cable car gave wonderful views of the area and much closer encounters with the rock's most photographed residents, the Barbary macaques. This species, originally from the mountains of Morocco, has been here since before the British occupation of 1704 and represents the only wild monkey population on the European continent. Gibraltar's Barbary macaque population was under the care of the British Army and later the Gibraltar Regiment from 1915 to 1991, who carefully controlled a population that initially consisted of a single troop. They were named after governors and brigadiers and high-ranking officers, and if any ill or injured monkey needed surgery or any other form of medical attention, it was taken to the Royal Naval Hospital Gibraltar and received the same treatment as would an enlisted serviceman. When the UK-based infantry units were withdrawn and garrison duties was left to the Gibraltar Regiment, the government of Gibraltar took over the responsibility for the Barbary macaques. My last full day in this amazing country started off with a morning visit to Sierra de la Plata, west of Bologna, just a 30-minute drive northwest of Tarifa, and then on to Pyrenees. My target bird here was white-rumped swift and is well known as the first place in the Western Palearctic where they were known to be breeding, and the famous breeding cave is easily seen from the lay-by, though unfortunately during my very short visit no swifts were seen. However, Iberian green woodpecker, great spotted woodpecker, rock bunting, Eurasian kestrel, griffon vulture, Sardinian warbler and fantastic views of blue rock thrush were all recorded. Continuing on, I headed west of the village of Pyrenees, a 20-minute drive where I followed a small track along a drainage channel. This was a great little road passing through agricultural and meadow. Corn bunting, bee-eater, linnet and goldfinch were the first birds I encountered, but as I continued on the habitat changed. Zitting cisticola, great reed warbler, Chetty's warbler and reed warbler were all vocalising from the reeds, while white stork, glossy ibis, spoonbill, black-winged still waded in the meadows. Movement from a bird seen in a muddy, irrigated field prompted me to jump on the brakes and scan its position, and this particular target bird didn't get away. Across the channel and scattered over the fields were approximately 30 collared pratincoll. The afternoon was spent relaxing and walking the road and trails close to the accommodation, trying to squeeze in the last few moments of this incredible journey I'd just taken over the last 11 days. Though, as expected, the birding was a little slow at this time of day, I did get to see a few more birds, including nice looks at cattle egret and spotless starling. On the final day, I took a leisurely drive up the coast, stopping at Marbella for a bite to eat before heading to Malaga, and here it seemed fitting to finish off this incredible 12-day journey in a similar fashion as it started. So I spent an hour and a half gazing at the awe-inspiring work of one of Malaga's most famous patrons at Museum Picasso.